Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're delighted to have Matt Biringer from North on the program, CEO and founder. Matt, would love to get an intro from you for the audience.
Yeah, awesome. First off, thank you for having me. And just a bit about me. I've probably spent about 12 years selling tech in various big tech companies. And about a year ago, decided to start a company out of my garage, which was a pretty cool experience. So I started North as a software platform that can help companies optimize their cloud spend and just control their digital infrastructure a little bit better. And delighted to be here. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So let's get into like your initial journey. I love that. Spent a decade selling tech. Tell us about like your educational upbringing, how you decided on your major, how you got into sales, and what's that first kind of decade or so look like before you start a company?
Yeah, it was very messy and very very traditional I guess I would say traditional sales background of I went to college and studied a major that you couldn't really do a whole lot with, and then eventually figured out I needed to make some money and fell into tech sales. I'm from Jersey originally, and went to a liberal arts school in Jersey. Had a nice 4 years there, and then I really wanted to at the time move to New York City and figure out like a career path in New York. I just loved the idea of being in New York. It just was very different from where I grew up, and um, yeah. So for me, I just like spent the summer after graduation just like applying to any job posting I could find. Like early days, I don't want to say early days internet, but like this was like way before, LinkedIn was popular. Like you had to go on, like you had to search, companies in New York City and just go to their websites and look at job listings. And I eventually got into a tech company as like an inside sales rep where I essentially like put together Excel spreadsheets for the sellers. And for me at the time, like I grew up very blue collar and very, very modest means type of family. And I remember being on the sales floor and like the top seller at this company. I only was there for a year before I moved to a different company, but the top seller at the time was like making over six figures. And to me, that was like a, that was like a very, I remember just being like completely confused how it was possible for a human to make $100,000 a year or more. And I was probably 22 at the time. So, um, yeah, it was cool. So I was like, you know what, let's get good at this because there's definitely ways to make money at it, and there's people who are making good money at it. And then I really, over time, just fell in love with technology sales. I learned a lot about, as much as I could, really, about what the technology actually did for companies, how to sell to companies. I became like one of these people that, you'll catch me reading, books about sales and marketing and branding, and I really like fell in love with like the sport of business in many ways. And yeah, I mean, it was a really wild like 10 to 12 years. Like I worked for three different companies, had great sales years, had tough sales years. I've traveled the whole gamut of like what a salesperson, will travel throughout their career. And then I just reached a point where I was like, let's take a shot at working for myself and let's try and build something from scratch, which I just thought was like such a fun adventure. And obviously we can get into anything and everything with my company, but yeah, for me, I just reached a point where I was like, this would be so fun to try to do, like why live your whole life on earth and not try to do crazy things every once in a while? It just seemed like a very fun adventure. So I decided to start a company out of my garage. Yeah.
So tell me about that inception point. So you're at a company, you're in a role, and walk us through the transition and problem discovery, and that kind of moment where you're like, okay, I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah, I spent like almost 5 years at a company called Pure Storage. They're like a data storage company. And it was really like the best run of my career by far. Like I had tons of personal success there. I had all sorts of really amazing things happen in my personal life outside of work. Like it really was like a very transformative like time of my life. When I got to Pure, I was single living in the city. When I left Pure, I was married with two kids. So it
Oh
was like
wow.
a very, very transformational time in my life in many ways. And it was really cool. Like they have such a great culture there. They have like amazing people. The product sells itself. It really is like one of the companies you work at, and you take the DNA of their company with you wherever you go, because it really is a customer first company. And what I noticed while I was there was just like very basic stuff that I think a lot of people in the tech industry notice over time, especially selling in like the B2B cloud space, is how confusing cloud economics can be to folks who don't have, $1 million sitting around to hire like a cloud FinOps team and buy all these tools and everything. And I really lived through various pain points of my customers trying to figure out, like, from a business perspective, what should their hybrid or all cloud strategy be? Should they continue to build data centers? Should they be moving to the cloud full on? And what I found was that a lot of customers were stranded with like very, very little help. And most people that were either consulting with these customers or like myself were trying to sell to customers were always coming at it at this like kind of biased viewpoint, based on what they want to sell and what their own kind of objective is, which I think is inevitable in like most businesses. Like, you obviously have to take things with a grain of salt. But for me, I figured out that, like, hey, there's a real problem out there. There's a massive opportunity. Cloud is a $200 billion global, revenue spend center that's going to keep growing and growing, and it's going to be over $1 trillion of revenue each year. The vast majority of that right now is done through, the vast majority of the purchasing, I should say, of that spend is done with spreadsheets and, corporate credit cards, right? So people are like literally pulling spreadsheets up, trying to figure out how many RIs to buy and how many reservations to reserve for Amazon and what their, machine architecture should be based on historical things. And they, you talk to like a CTO or like a head of DevOps, like they'll literally pull up like 10 or 12 different spreadsheets that maybe they'll come up with like an insight. And I just thought, ultimately, these are folks that are badly in need of help from vendors, right? Whether you're going to build a software solution or a human-based solution. I think in our case, we're mostly a software company, but there's a real human element to what we do, which I think our customers really identify with and love. I think any company you do business with where you can exchange Slack messages with the CEO and the CTO, like at 12 o'clock on a Friday, to ask them a question or to add a to-do list for their Monday morning. Like, I think there's a inevitable like human white glove touch to that company. And I think the longer you can keep that in the company's DNA, the better the company will do, and the happier the customers will be. So like that was something I really wanted to keep in the DNA of North for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Right. So like all of our customers like literally can send me a Slack message. I might get one in the middle of this, like literally asking me a question or anything like that. So so I think for us, like for me personally, my journey was like really just all around socializing with customers in my space and realizing all the challenges that were getting thrown at them simultaneously. I mean, this is on top of like the hundreds of cybersecurity threats and all sorts of budget constraints and layoffs. And there's 50 million things being thrown at tech leaders all the time.
Right.
If you can use a software provider or a partner or some sort of hybrid between the two and drastically simplify your cloud finances and just take that off your plate, I think for most CTOs and most tech leaders, it's a big win. So I just thought this is a great place to build a company.
Yeah. And so for the audience out there, kind of maybe you could talk about who your customer is and what the problem that you're solving for them.
Yeah, so we work with companies, I mean, literally companies that are in startup phase that maybe have 5 or 10 employees all the way through, we have a couple global customers that are in our fleet now too, right? So we are relatively agnostic as far as the type of customers and the type of vertical. Like our story is pretty much applicable anywhere. Like if you're swiping a credit card in AWS, chances are working with us will probably result in about half of your costs going away over time.
Wow.
And what we do is pretty cool. So essentially the problem statement for the company that's building technology in AWS is they really have to, for the most part, like predict what their usage is going to be in that cost center or in that tech stack many, many months in advance in order to get the best possible economic result from their investment in that cloud provider, right? So for like AWS, for example, they have gazillions of different products and hundreds of thousands of different SKUs. Like, there's teams at every company, either they're ignoring this problem or there's teams at every company trying to sit down, like I said, with a spreadsheet and figure out like how many T3 medium-sized machines do we need for the next 6 or 12 months? Should we do a 12-month reserved instance on all these machines, or should we do a 36-month reserved instance? Let's go talk to 15 line of business leaders and figure out, like, are we going to be a multi-cloud shop anytime soon? Can we double our investment in Amazon and do a 3-year deal with them to lower our cost rates, right? So, just like the 101 of our industry is every tech vendor on some level kind of operates like this, but in particular, this is true with cloud providers, is they essentially have 2 different buying models. The first would be like on demand, which is essentially pay as you go. So you swipe a credit card, you provision a bunch of servers and databases, and if you turn them off on Saturday, you don't get charged the hourly rates for those machines anymore. It's just literally pay as you go, like renting down to the minute. The problem with that model like I'm kind of alluding to, is that you're essentially paying list price. So you're
Yeah.
almost paying triple what you could be paying by getting that agility. So what we do is we allow customers to essentially groupify all their discounts. So they connect to our software platform and to our service, and we pair them with like buying, customer profiles, and then we group by wholesale 3-year discounts that we can recycle within those pods of customers. And we pair them based on historical data analytics, and we put a lot of like
Wow.
actual like machine learning into like the pairing of customers. I mean, it's not like one to one. It's like you'll join a group of other customers. Nobody knows each other. It's all kind of like
Right.
managed by us. But the idea is like if you have a bunch of customers that are spending 10 grand a month in EC2 servers, chances are, some of them might go up and down over time, but over a long period of time, like
Yeah.
they
In
probably will
aggregate,
spend
you can bet on, it's some percentage of that reserved instance that I need for
exactly.
each multi-tenant SaaS
Yeah.
product that I'm onboarding into that group.
Yeah, exactly. So like we can take the whole procurement layer away from the individual buyer account, do it at the partner reseller slash SaaS
Yeah.
provider kind of layer. And it goes from this like kind of predictive, hey, do we make this 12-month bet or 36-month bet? All of that goes away. They essentially get 3-year pricing as a monthly subscribable service, right? So it allows customers quite literally to like, we have customers who 5 minutes after plugging into our platform, their cloud bill, went down 50 or 51%, right? So
Wow.
it's pretty cool some of the results that we're
Yeah.
driving. It's pretty fun.
That is really cool. It's really rewarding too, because you just took this undifferentiated problem that all these heads of eng and CTOs have, which is how do I reduce my cloud spend, which is just undifferentiated budgetary kind of activities, operational cloud activities. So hey,
Yeah.
we'll just disintermediate that entire process for you, figure it all out with a whiz bangery SaaS AI platform,
Yep.
and voila, you have a 50% lower bill. So is it an arbitrage on your part where you're buying low and selling a little higher, or is it a
Yeah,
SaaS
not
platform fee? Like how do you guys make money?
Yeah, it's not really like an arbitrage thing. It's much more similar to like a managed service. So in many ways, like what we're doing with individual customers is in some ways kind of what Amazon did to the data center market 12 years ago when they launched it. It was like,
Mm,
hey, instead of like making this big bet, I mean, that was the initial value proposition of Amazon Web Services was instead of making this big bet
yeah,
and sitting around a table arguing for a year and then
on
eventually,
this $10 million
cutting a
data
exactly.
farm or whatever, yeah, server
Yeah,
farm.
you're building this massive global data center. Like, just get rid of that. Swipe a credit card with us. Like, yeah, of course, like per CPU, you might pay a slight premium, but the agility and the flexibility that you're going to get back in the business by not having the risk of all this stuff sitting around, like collecting dust if it's not getting used, or what happens if, you have 20 customers in your business and 10 of them leave. It's like, yeah, you need less infrastructure, right? So, I think for us, it's not really an arbitrage. It's much more of like it feels much more like a managed service. We don't like talk about it that way, I think, as much as we should, just because a lot of our
Yeah,
conversations are investor facing, and investors will tend to think managed service. They think people and upfront capital, which is 0% of that is needed in our type of company,
yeah,
because we don't have any upfront capital and make those reservations. But yeah, I mean, the back end guts of like how it works, it feels much more like a managed service. Like we
yeah.
onboard a customer, we kind
But a
of know what
managed
they
software
need.
as a service, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
infrastructure as a service, but we're managing it for you. We're removing all that complexity of like how many RIs should I get, and
Yeah, I mean,
when and
ultimately,
where
like,
and all that. Yeah,
yeah, if you're a CTO of a startup or head of DevOps at a bigger company or, whoever, like if you're managing these tech stacks, like usually the last thing you really want to do is sit around and figure out the financial piece of it. Like if you
yeah,
like, and they have so much to do with managing actual infrastructure. Like that's the real job. The real job is managing infrastructure. The tragedy is so many of them are so bogged down with like the cloud FinOps and the cost modeling and like how much should we buy, when should we buy, what should we do? Like we really take all that stress away, and it feels really good like when we have customer results that we drive immediately because it's you know my sales career, like every single company I worked for, it was always this leap of faith, right? It's like, hey, buy our stuff. We promise that when this plays out, this will play out, or within
mm.
12 months, you'll see this result. It's like, no, literally, like plug our software in and plug our service in, and in 5 minutes, if you don't see your costs go down, like just fire us. Like it's literally like that's the pitch. And for a lot of customers, are like, well, what's the catch? Like there is no catch. Like we're just
Mm.
building a company that we are pretty sure that people will love over the long run, right? And that's really like kind of what we're betting on.
Yeah, this is interesting. It's kind of like a yeah, I love how you describe it, which is it's the same thing AWS did to the data center industry, 10 or 15 years ago, and you're coming in and doing it to the cloud providers more or less, which is, hey, we can negotiate pools of huge server and storage um, instances and basically pass those savings on to you. And then, I guess, does a customer sort of outgrow you at some point where they're like, okay, now we have, 10 million to spend or 20 million to spend, and we're going to go direct to Amazon and negotiate like a commitment to consume and give a
Honestly,
discount.
honestly, they could. If like what I always tell customers, especially the bigger ones that we talk to, is like if you are 100% sure that you're going to use this exact amount of infrastructure for the next 3 years, you should hang up right now. And that's really like
Yeah,
you're not a fit for what we do. I don't
right.
mean that in a mean way at all. I mean that in a loving way. Like I don't want to charge you a savings fee for this stuff that you're going to buy anyway, right?
Yeah,
It's just you're not a great fit for us. So there are customers every once in a while that we disqualify just because they just and they disqualify us too, right? I mean, they know kind of what our system is and what we're trying to do.
yeah,
But I think for us, like the vast majority of customers don't really fit that profile. And even like we've even had some customers that have a really mature FinOps profile who we've tried to like push away a little bit. And we've tried to be like, hey, like, it seems like you guys already make multi-year reservations. Like you guys have a pretty like solid
yeah,
stack. And they're
yeah,
just like, honestly, I'd rather a lot of these customers, like we'd rather just pay the savings fee just to have a little bit more peace of mind that if the business changes dramatically in 12 months, we can move these reservations
yeah.
off our accounting
Well,
books
it
if it's
creates it
worth the
creates
premium.
more financial flexibility. It
Exactly.
just and you're basically offloading this cognitive task that falls on the DevOps people at an organization,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is a real cost. And now the CTO is going, I don't have to hire that marginal or that next nth number of DevOps managers to kind of figure out our infrastructures. I could offload some of that to North and save some money in the process. And
Hmm.
it's a classic kind of startup story, right? Which is taking this thing that's undifferentiated in an organization that's run on spreadsheets with and throwing bodies at it and creating some
Hmm.
software and AI to basically solve that problem for them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really how we think of it. And then over time, like our real like the way we think about our business is just, how can we build like kind of the way we think about it is like how can we build products and features that are really, really difficult to build that
Mm,
are also really difficult to make money off of? Like in other words, like, the way we think about it is we're going to make plenty of money off of like how we run the business, off of our discount, managed service and off of our rate optimization practice that we build into what we're working on. But so like the unit economics are great for us because, instead of selling $100 software, our average MRR is far above that when we sign a customer because it's based off a savings fee,
yeah,
right? So for us, like we have so much room as we grow our company to just load this platform up with like really, really rich data services. And there's tons of use cases and things that have nothing to do with rate
yeah,
optimization that
yeah,
should be handled by software and AI that in many ways like aren't either widely adopted in the cloud, world now, or
yeah,
just products that like nobody's really thought to build yet, like because they're just you can't really create a business off of it, right? So for us, we're like, why don't we create the best features over time, even stuff that won't be like revenue driving features, but will just be like so awesome for customers to sign in and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys built a feature for that. Like that is so useful. And of course, like not everything's gonna be monetizable,
yeah,
but like the customer experience is monetizable for us. Like that's how we
yeah.
think about it. So
Yeah, what
we're
you're
excited
describing
about
is
what we're
why I
building.
love B2B SaaS so much, right? Because you find this toehold, this beachhead, this thorny problem that somebody's paying to solve in some way at an organization in an undifferentiated way. You solve it for them. It saves them time and money, right? So you create value. You capture some of that value in your pricing and your savings fee. And then you learn about all the other adjacent problems that they have. And you keep building features and products and services to solve those other problems. And then so
Yeah.
every month you have the right to upsell, cross sell, and charge more. And so your
Hmm.
net revenue retention goes up over time because you have these customer relationships and you're continuing to solve this DevOps savings optimization problem month after month, year after year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's as simple as customer experience for us. Like the
Mm.
way we think about it is literally, if customers will love it, like we will probably eventually build it and ship it. I mean, that's really how
Yeah,
we think about it.
that's it.
We
Yeah.
don't we don't think about like how do we run how do we stay 8 employees forever, and how do we,
Yeah.
get acquired in 3 years, like all that stuff, like
It'll all happen naturally. If
it'll
you're
happen or
solving
it
the
won't
customer
happen.
problem,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The,
that's
the
the
problem
fundamental.
now, exactly. The problem now is a customer. Like that's what we're thinking
Yeah,
about.
I love that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just think not enough companies in our space are thinking that way. A lot of them are thinking very short term, or just like, how do I get this person?
Or they
How do I
start from the
trick this
tech.
person into buying? Yeah,
Yeah.
they'd start with the tech, like
They kind
the
of start with
speeds
the
and
infrastructure and
feeds.
they work their
Yeah,
way out. Yeah.
exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. And the other really cool thing I love about our company, and that's like, I mean, you could tell I'm obviously passionate about what we do, but like the other thing I love about our company is I've always been, as a salesperson, I've always been kind of like refined in these like very set geographies, right? Like I'd have 100 accounts or 50 accounts.
Hmm.
Like we could take the story to any account for the most part, like globally, that
Yeah.
we want to, right? Like it's all up to us how we grow. Like we have customers that are based in Chicago, we have customers that are based in San Francisco, and we have customers that are based in Vermont. Like it's cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool because it's just like we're instead of thinking about how do I sell this like shiny box to the 50 accounts that everybody else has tried to sell this shiny box to, it's like, why not just take the story as widely as I can, and the right people will come to us, and the right
Yep.
people will love our story. Like we don't have to go and, like I said earlier, like we've literally disqualified customers being like, hey man, like we're happy to onboard if you want, but like, you guys just won't really get a lot of value
Hmm.
from what we're doing. Honestly, you'd
Yeah.
rather, it's better for you to do it the way you're doing it. So that gives us a lot of freedom to operate like in a wide net, so which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And so talk us through the savings. So basically, your pitch to a customer is, "Hey, I can probably save you 50%. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 70, whatever it is, and I'm going to take
Yep.
a percentage of that. And so it's really no risk to you.
Yeah.
Why don't you turn it on and see what we can do?" That's kind of the pitch.
Yeah, it's literally the pitch. I don't know if I've pitched it better myself, like in a year of doing it. Like that's like I actually might pencil that down and steal it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you go
like
back
that
and
is
watch the
literally,
podcast. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
send it to a
That
customer.
is,
Just go listen to the interview. My
yes.
my investor just tells you how, like, exactly what we do. But
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's literally quite honestly how it is. And like we had the disadvantage for so long during 2023 of essentially either having like a partially working product or just not like being pre-product. So
mhm,
we spent the first 7 months of 2023 really not having a product. Like we had a
mm,
working kind of bubble MVP for a little while, and then eventually we kind of re-released like a much better version of our product. Like I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months ago now, 4 or 5
nice.
months ago, something like that.
And what is that
So
take rate
now
on the savings? What typically?
it's 20%, yeah,
Okay.
and it's metered against the on-demand equivalent, and it's all automated, which is really cool. So like that's the other really cool thing about working in this ecosystem is Amazon and all these providers have APIs you can hook into, and you can make the tech really really automated and slick in this way. But essentially, our software will know, hey, these discount commitments we added into your account, they brought your bill down from 25K to 19K, right? So you're obviously going to pay for the 19K, which you would have anyway, but we're going to charge you 20% of the 6K that we saved you. A
Nice.
lot of times it's more than
Yeah.
that, right? But the key concept is it's always a percentage of the actual net savings. So it's never a situation. There's no upfront capital. There's no upfront commitment. You don't even have to have you don't even have to have a contract with us. To be honest, obviously we have an MSA, but like we don't lock people into 6 month or 12 month contracts or anything. There's no hidden fees or platform fees. Like it's very, very simple. It's like, hey, we just monetize the savings, our actual savings reservations that we own and operate that we add into your account, get you, and that's really it, right?
Yeah.
And if we see, and the other thing that's great about that system is we're perfectly aligned to the customer experience, right? So like if I want to grow the revenue of my business, like I need to build products or make the process slicker or better that ultimately will result in more savings for customers. So it's like for us, like it's not like we have to upsell, like, hey, we want to charge you another few $100s a month for this feature. It's like, no. I need to save them more money. That's how I grow these
Yeah.
accounts, and obviously like growing with the accounts too. So yeah, we're really excited. What we're seeing too early I mean, we're still very early as a company. We're not even a year old yet. But what we're seeing is just like, it's almost kind of a land grab right now, which is kind of fun, right? So there's like, we obviously have a couple competitors too, like every other company in the world, but
Yep.
The category is so massive that,
Right.
I think you'll see, I'm hoping, our company will be there too, but I really think you'll see like multiple unicorns come out of this type of, company profile in 10 years.
Yeah.
I think everyone's going to look back at this 10 years and be like, wow, you remember when everyone like swiped a credit card in AWS and nobody used these providers? Like this is insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm super bullish about just the category in general.
Yeah, I love that. And thinking about multi-cloud for a sec, as of right now, it sounds like it's only AWS. But what are your thoughts on multi-cloud, and when do you go to Azure and GCP
Yeah,
and others?
I
Yeah.
think we have to balance like two, and this is just my opinion, like so we have to balance two thoughts. Like the first thought is part of the problem we're solving is the fact that so much of this procurement was getting filtered through partners that sold a million providers. There's literally companies who are like, we sell you AWS and we sell you Splunk and we sell you Dell and VMware and Cisco, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's like you get to a point where like, if you're trying to be good at too many things, you're essentially bad at everything. Really ultimately,
Right.
that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Yeah.
So we always are going to try to be a specialist company in terms of like trying to be the best or the second best in one or two categories. I think
Yeah.
that's like, even that in and of itself is super ambitious. So I think for us, like the obvious next jump is probably Google Cloud. So we're starting to kind of like dip our toe a little bit into the Google Cloud world.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a different ecosystem. There's different partner programs. There's different financial, reservation systems and saving systems that customers grapple with.
Yeah.
So it is like you kind of have to start from scratch, like learning the ecosystem and then building the product backwards. But I think like in the next like 60 to 90 days, you'll see like a button pop up in the North app that's like connect your Google account. I think that's probably our next jump. And then, I can see us also serving Azure customers. But I think we'll probably stay within the big three for a really long time.
Yeah.
I don't see us like, I just think there's so much revenue in those three ecosystems.
In the big three, I can see. And I can also see this arbitrage opportunity between the three big clouds where, I'm, Acme startup, whatever. I don't care where my VM's running or my Kubernetes container is like running, like cluster is running. Like if it makes more sense and you can generate more savings for me, like by lifting and shifting some of that over and around between the three big clouds.
That's another thing that we've thought about on our roadmap too, is like, how do we eventually get to a world, is like probably multiple years in the future, but like, I think what you're describing is going to play out. Like customers are going to be like, I don't care about what individual commitments and reservations I have in each individual account or each individual cloud provider. I want to commit to X percentage dollars per month across, and then just be able to draw that down anywhere that my development teams, my technology teams. Obviously that's figuring out how to deliver that
and multi-year.
Is super complex. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a really like just the accounting piece of that and the financial risk modeling and everything else is just, you're talking something. But like that is a feature I think that like will come out with at some point, because it's just, I think it's the future of the category.
Yeah. So if I sign up with you and I'm a startup, am I still getting credit for the consumed revenue on AWS, or are you getting credit?
Yeah, you're still like your billing is still direct with AWS. You still pay your AWS bill, and we just manage all the discounting for you, and we end up owning the title of the discounts essentially, and provide them into your bill. We do have a version where customers can consolidate bill through us, where like essentially they pay us and we pay AWS for them. It's obviously a pass through. We don't really charge any extra premiums for that or anything. But yeah, customers can choose either route with us. Both are fine. Most customers they choose to keep their billing directly to AWS for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, they want to be able to have that credit. You want to be able to get the co-sell, which typically you got to have 100K in trailing 12 months consumed revenue.
Yep.
And things like that. So how do you think about your I come from the Azure Marketplace world and AWS Marketplace world. How do you think about Marketplace as a strategy for you and your go-to-market and things like that?
Yeah, so Marketplace is very near term for us. Like we view that as a very important part of our story when we're trying to architect how to have a great relationship with the cloud vendors themselves. There is a piece of our company, I think, that will always be a little bit dependent on being good players and good citizens within these ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
Not every company in our category is being good players in these ecosystems. I think for us, like I've spent 12 years selling B2B tech. I know what it's like to be an enterprise sales rep. I know what it's like to have a partner be poking around one of your accounts. Like I totally get like the kind of tug of war between like optimal customer experience for like optimal like commission check. Like they have to balance those as salespeople. Like I totally get it. So I think for us, like getting listed on the marketplace and finishing that up, we're probably 4 or 5 weeks out from being on the AWS marketplace. We're working on that actively.
We
That's
have
huge for
partners.
us.
I think we mentioned this, but we have partners who can help with that. So there's a little plug there for Team Ignite.
No, 100%. And you were one of the first people to talk to that you're like, dude, don't worry about it. We'll hook you up. Like we'll get you guys on that marketplace.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's big for us too, also because the way AWS like comps their salespeople is when you're on the marketplace, it's on the bill. So it's like they draw down their commission too. So I think like for us, like it all
retires quota.
Retires quota, and we ultimately could be like a slightly like what I think Nirvana for us in a couple of years is like an AWS enterprise rep is like, okay, these customers, they want to do a 3-year deal. Why don't we push them towards North? Because with the savings fee included, it'll draw down our commission quicker. And that's also optimal customer experience because they get all the agility with our platform. So I think that's like, that's definitely something we think about a lot is how to get onto the marketplace and how to use that as kind of a stepping stone to really build like a good relationship with the field reps and all the field teams.
Yeah. So how are you balancing all this? I mean, you have a couple kids and are you still in New York? You're outside of New York now. Like how are you managing all this?
Yeah, I'm in Connecticut. So most of the time I'm like either freezing in my basement working or nowadays I work out of my kitchen a lot. So, I think for me, definitely time management is like one of the biggest stresses I go through. And any parent will tell you that like not even being an entrepreneur, but like trying to like balance an active career while, especially in the winter when your kids are home once a week sick, it's just like, it's kind of crazy, So, I think just for me, like 100% of my time from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed is spent either like on my family or my company. Like that's really it. Like you could like
not playing Call of Duty at night anymore.
No.
Just messing with you. I had another
not as much as I used to.
He said you have 5 F's: finance, family, and like the 5 F's you need to be a complete success. There's like faith and family and finance, fitness, fulfillment. Where do you feel
the
like
fitness part becomes the hardest to keep up? Yeah, it does. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm also like, I think it's hard to be both a morning person and a night person. So my kids are up at 6:30. Sometimes we get to 7, but it's fine. So like, yeah, in theory, could I wake up at 5 and squeeze a workout in? Like maybe, but like, I also I'm like, enough is enough. I need a little bit of time. So I'm usually up at 6 with the kids, and then for me, like the fitness thing is the hardest thing. I try and I do jujitsu on the side. That's kind of like my hobby. Maybe once a week I can get to jujitsu, which is really cool. So I do that. I do a little bit of weightlifting here and there. I try and that's another thing I try and make really efficient is like I will sometimes take a 30-minute break in the middle of the day and like run to the gym. And like maybe that makes me a bad entrepreneur. I don't think it does, but like once in a while I will do that. You gotta do it. You need the mental break. And I will also say that like there's times, that I've been really stuck on a business problem or an issue or something I'm trying to figure out, or there's something going on. And like honestly, like some of my best creative ideas have come from like going on a jog for like 40 minutes and just being like, and then at the end of the jog, I'm like, wait a second, what if I do this thing this way? And it's like, oh, that's so much better. Like, why didn't I think of that? And it's like sometimes you got to just like give your mind
put it down for a little bit. Yeah,
absolutely.
My wife got me a tonal for my birthday about 1.5 years ago, and that turned out to be like amazing. It's this little home workout machine that just hangs on your wall, and
that's so
nice.
Cool.
Yeah, it's so nice.
That's so cool.
So I get in that. I can always get in that 20-minute weight training session almost every day.
Is that the one LeBron sponsors?
Yeah.
That was so cool. It has a big screen and everything.
Big screen with it could go 100. It can each rope can go up to 100 pounds, which is it's really with the digital weight. It's more like 150 pounds. So it's like more weight than you need, and you could just really quickly get in, and you end up doing all these like weird exercises that you wouldn't normally do, like a cross chop and stuff like that. Stuff you just wouldn't go to the gym and you'd be like, you know what I need to do is I need to grab the rope and do a cross chop.
Yeah, that's another thing. Sometimes I go to the gym and I'm like, I've been lifting weights forever, and I'm like, I don't know, should I do bench presses today? Should
Yeah.
just having a machine that will give you like creative fitness, exercise. I think that's fucking cool. It's super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
I
you
don't know if I
end
can
up
say the
doing
F
all
word in
kinds of
this, but
different chest exercises that you would normally do, like
yeah.
reverse incline flies. Like this is not something I
Mm-hmm.
would just normally go, yeah, I need to do
Yeah.
like a reverse incline. Yeah. Anyway.
Stuff that you would
Um,
say on Instagram, like, or Google, like Googling, chest exercise. You'd be like, oh,
right.
maybe I should try that. But it's like, no, it takes it all
Just
away.
dials that in for you. You just look at the guy
Yeah.
doing it and you're just, okay, I got it.
You're like, ah, if I do
Um,
that a little bit, I'll look exactly like that guy.
over time. Yeah. It takes years, man. It takes years. I got really out of shape during COVID. But starting to get back into shape a little bit.
You look in shape. You look fit.
Getting there, getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still need to lose some weight, but kind of getting there. Um,
Yeah.
I've
COVID
been
COVID
consider
was a weird period of time.
I gained like
Very
30
weird.
pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gained, yeah. I remember
I'll tell
it
you a
was a
funny story about weight gain. My wife's first baby, she made these like I had just started at Pure. I think I was at Pure for 6 months. So I was like very, very similar to like how I am now. I'm
yeah.
like in like build mode where I'm just like working around the clock
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get new
Yeah.
customers and all that. Like it's very standard. And she had just given birth to our first to our son, and she was like I guess there's all these things that women can eat to encourage lactation and all that, and it's supposed to
Mm,
be good for the baby. So she started making these lactation cookies.
mm,
And I have the biggest sweet tooth of anybody you've ever met in your entire life.
mm.
Like I will literally eat a carton of ice cream in the middle of the night, like two whiskeys deep. You're like, let's take that thing
Yeah,
down.
whatever. I'll do the
So,
whole thing.
so I used to just come home and I'd be ravenously hungry, and I think I probably gained 15 pounds just from we joke about it to this day, where I'm like, literally, if I would look, I could literally point at my body and be like, this is from the lactation cookies, just so you know, like,
Well, you kind of put on some weight when your wife gives birth. The husband also gains weight because
yeah,
you just end up
yeah,
eating kind of like you're kind of co-eating, right? And you're like, okay, you're gonna have
a
another
little
slice.
bit.
I'll have another slice, and yeah,
Yeah, it becomes easy to like get takeout and stuff, and and then you also like you're adjusting to your new schedule as I'm coming down. So it's like on a normal weeknight where you might go to the gym at 7 o'clock, you're like, you know what, I'll give you a foot massage and I'll watch TV with you because you like are in pain all day and you're pregnant. Like, sure, it's like
yeah,
so you definitely have to be careful like a little bit. Like I think like the 2 points where like particularly men will like gain weight a lot is like the freshman 15, and then also like right around like their first kid is always those are the two traps. Like
yep,
if you can not gain too much weight during those two periods of time, like you'll be fine.
yeah, yeah. I'm considering doing the Wegovy Ozempic stuff because I'm just like
Oh yeah,
I've been counting my calories, working out, playing basketball 3 times a week, getting 10 to 15,000 steps a day, doing everything right, not drinking that
yeah,
much. Like just the list goes on and on and on. And I'm just
yeah,
kind of maintain. I lost that first 15 or 20 pounds after COVID, and I still
yeah,
have like another 40 or 50 to go to where I'm like, okay, I'm back to like my college weight, and I
yeah,
just cannot lose any more weight. And so I'm just like, okay,
yeah.
I think I'm just gonna take the shot. Just give me the shot. Like, why not?
People are. I think this is how the zombie apocalypse starts. Is everybody takes the that
Yeah,
thing, and then like a year from now, people are like,
eating
and they
brains.
start going. But yeah, yeah. I always joke, I'm like, I never lost the baby weight. You know, like when you're like younger and like some of your friends, like everybody goes through their chubby years when they're like 14, 15, or
Mm,
normal people do. And then
yeah,
most of the people, they shoot up like 2 or 3 inches. I just never shot up that final 2 or 3 inches, and I still have all my baby weight. So I always joke that it's just the baby weight. That's all. It'll come off eventually.
yeah, yeah. I keep working on it. So back to North. Like, what's the vision for where this is in like a decade or two? Like, where do you see this kind of going?
Yeah, I think it's too early to like really think too much about that. I think you can get stuck like fantasizing almost about I'm and plus I'm like kind of weird. I feel like if I think too much about the future, I get just so distracted from like I'm even like that with day-to-day stuff. If I'm like, hey, I'm gonna take an hour out of prospecting and I'm gonna do this, and then all of a sudden I'm like 2 hours later I'm still doing this thing, and I'm like
Mm.
deep in, and then I'm
You
in
end
this
up on a
rabbit
lot of
hole of some other
not urgent, not
project.
important things,
Yeah, I'm like,
and
I don't
that
know why I
aren't.
just spent 3 hours doing this. Like it's such a waste of
Yeah,
time. So I think for us, like just general vision is like I think we just want to be a software company that helps people manage their digital finance with their digital infrastructure.
Yeah.
And, I think like I think the space is wide open right now. I think there's a lot of like competitive, not a lot, but there's a few competitors in our category. I think they're all pretty good companies, to be honest with you. So, um, I wouldn't say anything bad about any of them, but for us, I still think the space is like just so wide open for somebody to come and be the Stripe of cloud optimization.
I like that.
And,
Yeah.
for us, I think that's like the long-term vision, the size and scope and when, where, and what brings us there. Like, that stuff will work itself out, or, maybe we won't get there. I don't know. But
Yeah.
to me, like in my head, that's kind of how I think about it, is like, we're building the early stage Stripe of cloud optimization, because it's just like Stripe. You sign in, everything is so easy. You have a million data services. It's like the whole entire, like, I mean, they really did an amazing job of the whole entire like world of financing and like managing customers and managing digital finance, like for B2C or B2B. Like, they made it all so automated, so software defined, and they just loaded it with so many data services and so many features that it's impossible to even think about leaving that platform, because you're like, we just do everything here. Like, why do I
Yeah.
need to leave this platform?
Right.
So I think for us, like, that's really what we're aiming to get to. But we'll see. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. Well, let's switch to a rapid fire to wrap up. What's a favorite technology tool that you've been using that you can't live without?
It's a really good question. I use Figma religiously for everything that we do. Um, so probably Figma is where I spend a lot of like my tool time.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll give it a couple shout outs. I like Apollo quite a lot. I do obviously a lot of sales and prospecting for the company.
Oh
So
yeah.
using Apollo is really helpful. But I'll give a shout out to Mac Redden and the awesome team over at ComStore. I don't know if you guys have checked ComStore out. Have you
No.
looked at these guys?
Oh,
Dude, ComStore. So you should have him on the podcast. He's amazing.
okay.
But he's
I'd
like,
love an intro. Yeah.
I'll literally introduce you guys after this call.
Yeah.
I just bought a license for their software last week. They were pre-product like forever, and they finally released like the first version of this product that they built. And it's it's kind of like a networking intelligence product that hooks into your LinkedIn,
Mm.
and you can collaborate networks and trade instructions, and you do
Ah.
also like they do a lot of really cool things with specifically in like integrated into your LinkedIn. But it's really supposed to, like, they call it like the go to network tool versus the go to market tool. I swear I'm not going to get paid to say this. I just like their product.
Oh, I love that.
But I would
Yeah.
say, if you're in sales, like, give those guys a look. It's like $20 a month. It's like the coolest product. And they're gonna. I'm assuming they're gonna put a whole lot more stuff into it over time. But they're super cool. He would be awesome
Yeah.
for your podcast too, because he's
Yeah.
like, on his LinkedIn, he's a master at organic LinkedIn marketing. I think they got close to a million impressions on LinkedIn for their product launch last week or 2 weeks ago, and they
Nice.
spent $0 on LinkedIn marketing. Like, it was all just organic marketing and organic like commentary, and just they're really good at this. So I like that product quite a bit. But yeah, those are the few that I probably use quite a lot these days.
Nice. You talked about early bird versus night owl. Which one are you?
I'm definitely, from a business point of view, I enjoy the mornings more than I enjoy late nights.
Mm.
So like, the most peace I ever feel is like 6 o'clock in the morning. Everything is super quiet. It's just like nice and relaxing. So I deeply enjoy the mornings much more in my 30s than I did in my 20s. But I would say, like, given my current schedule and kids and business and everything else, like, you'll see me up like late at night, like all the time now. It's not like rare
Yeah.
for somebody on my team or a customer to get an email or a Slack message at like 11:30, 12:30 at night for me, which wasn't always the case in my career. A lot of times I would be the opposite. I would wake up super early, get a bunch of stuff done, and then in the afternoon I'd work, and then at night I'd work out and go do other things. But now it's kind of reversed because of my schedule. So I would say I'm a little bit more of a night owl now.
Nice. What's one book that has significantly influenced your professional life?
It's a really good one. There's a few. I read a book. I believe it's the author of the gentleman who just released the biography on Elon Musk.
Walter Isaacson.
Yes, yes. I believe he wrote this book, but I might be misremembering. I might be off here, but I thought he wrote this book. But there's a book called The Presentation Skills of Steve Jobs, and it's a
Oh,
long, like obviously like every startup and tech person, he's cool, he's awesome. But it's a dissection of like all the psychology that goes into the way he would present his product launches, and it's
Carmine
cool. It's
Gallo is the author.
that's the okay. So
Yeah.
Walter Isaacson must have done a different one on him. Because there's famously, I'm misremembering this too, but I think there's famously not an autobiography from him. It's all third party,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So, but yeah, I would say Presentation Skills of Steve Jobs was like a game changer for me. It
Wow.
really like,
Hmm.
that was back when I was actually in field sales, and it changed the way I thought about doing presentations and slide decks and everything. I actually got very, very good at the presenting part of selling technology from like
Yeah.
just from watching, or reading that book rather. It's cool.
Wow.
I would say there's a few others, but that's
Yeah.
definitely like one of the ones
That's
that
one that
jumps out.
pops out. Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
What's one habit for success that's contributed most to yours?
What's a hack for success?
A habit.
A habit. It's another one of these subjects that I could probably talk for like an hour about, but um, I would say that be very like something I did a lot of when I was younger that I don't do anymore is I played poker, like Texas Hold'em all the time. I was like
Mm.
really like every 25-year-old back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Like I was
Bunch of
super
guys in
into
their
poker.
20s playing Texas Hold'em. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like so I still love the game. I just don't get a chance
It's
to play as
fun.
much.
It's fun.
But you learn a lot about like the obviously like game theory in
Mm.
that game. One of the concepts you learn that's super, super applicable to business success, I think at least, is the concept of expected value. So, like, in other words, if there's 10 cards in a 40 card pile that help you, you have an expected value of, 10 divided by 40, right? So
Yeah.
25%.
You got
So, like,
25% kind of expected
yeah,
value. Yeah. To hit your hand or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, understanding the expected value of like everything you do in your business life. So, like, all of us are all very different creatures. Like, entrepreneurs are all like that too. Like, some of us have different styles. Some of us do a lot of like this thing, but don't do a lot of this. And then you talk to another entrepreneur, it's completely different.
Yeah.
I think for everybody, and there's different ways to succeed, obviously, but I think for a lot of people, I would say understand the expected value of everything that you do throughout the course of the day, and be like radically honest with yourself about like what is near zero expected value or just low expected value. Like
And what's kind of the
especially as you get
ROI, right? Because there's stuff that like
exactly,
sometimes you can throw a little call in, 5 or 10 chips or whatever.
yeah.
And now you're in the pot and your expected value of hitting is way beyond what that like 5 or 10 chip kind of costs you to kind of call to stay in the pot. That's kind of
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
ROI of what you're doing.
Yeah, and constantly be thinking about that. I mean, from a time management perspective, from also like thinking about how to win deals and all of that, like
Yeah.
everything that you do, especially if you're building stuff from scratch, like if you're building a company from scratch, like you have a very limited amount of time to like get some progress to scrape together
Yeah.
the next investment round or whatever the case may be. Like you don't really have a lot of time. Like you have very limited. Like you have to be really radical about like so there's stuff that you'll do, like every entrepreneur, there's stuff you'll do early on that you're never going to do in 5 years. Like I'm
Yeah.
never going to make 100 cold calls a day in 5 years. Probably not. I mean, probably not. I say probably
Well, it's
maybe I will.
undifferentiated
I
for
don't know.
you as
Like,
a
I don't know.
CEO now to do
Yeah.
that, right? It's better to hire
Yeah.
some young, scrappy 20 something to do that.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to a scale where like that's just completely outsourced, and then you get to that next level, and it's like, all right, well now I have to understand expected value of my time spent in these buckets now that we're a
Yeah.
bigger company versus when we were bootstrapping, and I just think like understanding expected value and ROI of like every little thing that you, even down to like, am I spending too much time at events? Am I going to these events and I
Mm.
get nothing out of them, but it feels like I'm busy and it feels like I'm networking and I
I,
take
I
pictures
don't
and
go
it's
to
cool. It's
events
like,
because of that reason. Like, so
me
if you see me
too.
at an event, it's
Ah.
very special. You should walk up to me and make it very valuable for me because I'm like, I probably don't want to be there.
Yeah, I'm like that too. I'm like the worst with that. I know you used to do it more. Like I talk to people who are like entrepreneurs, you should be at events all the time. I'm like, I
No.
just don't get a lot out of
Yeah.
these things.
I should be
Like,
either talking to my customers or building stuff for them. That's it.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm the
yeah,
same
I
as a
think so
VC.
too.
It's like, if I'm not meeting with a founder or a potential LP, what am I doing with my time?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's
There's
like,
zero value add beyond like meeting another founder, helping them somehow, or
yeah,
talking to another potential LP. That's it.
yeah. I think the only other thing I would say, which I think you just alluded to too, is like always deal value first. Like,
Mm,
just be a good person. Like, honestly, I have this policy that I started adopting a few years ago, and it's helped my career so much. Is like, I just don't do business with assholes. I'm sorry to say. It's
mm.
just like, if I don't like you, I'm not gonna do business with
It's
you.
such a big market. You
And
just don't have to. Nobody has the time
yeah,
for that. Yeah.
and like, if you don't like me, don't do business with me. It's
And
okay. Like,
I've had some
no big
LPs like
deal.
that I just had to quietly fire, and maybe
Yeah,
they're listening to this
it's okay.
podcast and they realize who they are, but I've just like, I just don't send them the
It's
deals
okay. Life
anymore.
is
And yeah,
Yeah, life is too
yeah,
short to just be bogged down trying to make some miserable person happy,
100%.
So I
Yeah.
just think those sorts of things, just be a good person and feel value first, and good things will happen. I think that's always good practice.
Last question I want to dive into is jujitsu. Like, what's a lesson or a series of lessons you've learned from practicing jujitsu that applies to business and success? Because I see a lot of
Well,
people that I know and famous people, practicing jujitsu and having
mhm.
success. So what is it about that discipline or about that
Yeah,
practice? Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much. I mean, I have a deep love. I don't, that's the one thing that I haven't had as many hours to do in 2023 that I look back and I'm like, I wish I did more jujitsu. I'm back now to like going once a week and it's
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, I would say a few pieces of like massive value. So like the first is it is like legitimate brain medicine, right? So when jiu-jitsu is a very, very like physical game. Anybody can learn it, anybody can be good at it, but you have to analyze like very, very drastic problems very quickly, right? Like if somebody passes your guard and they're on top of you and they're trying to choke you out, like there's a real punishment to not figuring out how to defend yourself in that situation. So like your brain is freaking out a little bit. Your
Yeah.
brain's like, oh my God, I don't want to get choked. Like
Yeah.
doesn't feel great. And of
Yeah.
course it's like a game you tap, it's no big deal. But I think like just problem solving, and also like it forces your brain to be so present, and just like every jujitsu player will talk about, like they get off the mat and they like for that 40 minutes or 45 minutes, like they completely, like they didn't
Yeah.
even think what their name was. They forget about everything in their whole lives besides rolling and besides
Yeah.
being mentally present. So it's like, it's really like, it's fantastic for your brain. But the other thing is it's great for your ego too. Like
Mm.
it really teaches you
Getting
that like,
better.
yeah, it teaches,
Yeah.
it's the, it like you go into a jiu-jitsu gym, everybody is different. There's people from every single economic situation, every single social situation. There's people who are way more successful than you. There's people who are way less successful than you. There's people who are bigger and stronger than you. There's people who are smaller than you. And you'll learn that I'll never forget when I first started doing jujitsu when I lived in Brooklyn. There was a gentleman who was rolling at Renzo Gracie's academy in Williamsburg. And he, I don't know the circumstances or whatever, but he didn't have any legs. Like his legs had cut off at the
Wow.
thighs, and
Wow.
he was I think a blue or a purple belt in jujitsu. And I remember just getting strangled by it. I'm
Wow.
literally like trying to do, and
And
the only thing he
he
could use
doesn't
was his
have
arms.
legs to wrap you with
He was,
to do
yeah,
a
it's a
half guard
complete,
properly and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, and you would think that like all like it would just be the easiest thing in the world, and I'm sitting here as a white belt. So like you have these moments like throughout jujitsu where you learn that like it's okay in life just to be a white belt. It's okay to be like, I'm
Mm.
learning this thing as I go, and it reintroduces you to the idea of like really have very little ego. Always be a learner, always be willing to be a teacher too. If you see somebody that's also starting out, like the really cool thing now, I've been rolling for like 5 years, so like the really cool thing is sometimes I'll see like a kid coming into our gym who's 20, 21 years old, and we do a round or two together, or maybe he asks me a question. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy to spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about jujitsu with you.
Yeah.
And just, I don't have to coach. We can all learn, but just talking about how I would handle certain situations and certain techniques. And obviously jujitsu is very similar to like really dense game theory type of games where like you can have a whole lifetime of learning it. There's an infinite amount of scenarios and
Yeah.
techniques that
Yeah.
and different styles you're going to grapple with. So it's like it really is constant problem solving. But I just think it's like it's such a great game. It's obviously great for self defense, but it's also just good for like mental health, and
Mm.
it's good for fitness too.
Yeah.
I always suggest that anybody who is interested in jujitsu, I think it's like one of the best things you could do for your career and for your life. And it's made me a better like entrepreneur. It's made me a better like father. It's made me a better husband, more
Yeah.
patient. So
Yeah.
it's good for everything if
I love that.
if you're interested.
Yeah, you're making me want to go sign up. I've done like maybe 3 or 4 classes over the years, but I have a couple boys that are teenagers now, so I'm thinking about doing it with them. I think it'd be really fun if I can get
Oh,
like
it'd be so
a
cool.
mixed age one, you know? Um,
My 5-year-old, like all he wants to do is wrestle and grapple. I've never even taught him. He's just like he's obsessed with trying to beat me up, and I can't wait. Like I think this spring I'll take him to his first class and like see if he likes it. He watched a jujitsu video on my Instagram by accident once,
oh,
and he was for the next 2 weeks he was like begging me to pull up that video again. So I'm like
oh, that's
excited to take
amazing.
him at some point. I think he'll really enjoy like getting at least some of his energy out there. So
Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming on the program. I'm sure plenty of entrepreneurs and some investors will get a lot of value from listening to the conversation. Where can potential customers and uh, partners learn about North and you?
yeah, just go on our website, north.inc, INC. It's super simple web URL. If you have any questions for me directly, always drop me a line, MATT, Matt@north.inc, and or drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm always around.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, Brian. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise.